They are responsible for nearly 1 million deaths every year. And yet, you've probably crushed one without thinking twice. But here's the impossible part. What if the most dangerous creature on Earth isn't hunting you out of hunger, but for something far more calculated? Mosquitoes. Not lions. Not sharks. Not even snakes. And this is where it gets weird. Because these tiny insects don't kill you directly. They turn your own body into the weapon. One bite. That's all it takes. But what actually happens inside that bite? And why does something so small have such a massive impact on human history? Here's the hidden truth. When a mosquito lands on your skin, it's not just feeding. It's injecting saliva, loaded with microscopic invaders it picked up from someone else. Malaria, dengue, yellow fever. Invisible killers riding inside a drop of blood. But here's the strange part. They're not even doing it for themselves. They're doing it for their offspring. So the question becomes, if they're not feeding out of survival, are we just collateral damage in a much bigger system? And that leads to a deeper question. What would actually happen if every mosquito on Earth suddenly disappeared? Would disease vanish overnight? Would humanity finally be free? Or would removing them trigger something far worse? Because the answer isn't as simple as less bugs, better world. In fact, what happens next changes everything. You might think wiping out mosquitoes is easy. After all, how hard could it be to eliminate a tiny insect? But here's the reality. There aren't millions of them. There aren't billions. There are trillions. And that's not even the craziest part. In places like Alaska, yes, freezing Alaska, there are estimates of over 7 trillion mosquitoes alone. Rising global temperatures have quietly expanded their territory, turning once safe regions into breeding grounds. So now the question changes. How do you eliminate something that exists everywhere? One idea sounds simple. Let nature handle it. Bats, for example, can eat up to 600 mosquitoes in a single hour. Sounds perfect, right? But here's the twist. To wipe out mosquitoes this way, you'd need billions of bats. And suddenly, the sky becomes a different kind of problem. So maybe not bats. What about stopping them from feeding? Cut off their blood supply, and you stop reproduction. But here's where it gets even stranger. Mosquitoes don't bite because they're hungry. They bite because they need blood to produce eggs. So unless humans and animals somehow stop having blood, yeah, that's not happening. Which brings us to the most extreme solution yet. Genetic control. Scientists have proposed releasing genetically modified male mosquitoes. They don't bite. And when they reproduce, their offspring can't survive. Slowly, silently, the population collapses. But that raises a terrifying question. If we can erase one species like this, what's stopping us from erasing others? And more importantly, should we? Let's say it works. Decades pass, and mosquitoes are gone. Completely. No buzzing. No bites. No itching. Sounds perfect, right? But here's where things take a turn. Because the moment they disappear, something unexpected happens. Millions of lives are instantly saved. Diseases like malaria and dengue begin to vanish. Entire regions once plagued by constant outbreaks finally breathe. And that's not even the biggest shift. For the first time in human history, stepping outside at night doesn't come with risk. No invisible threat. No silent infection. But here's the strange part. Animals benefit too. Livestock stop dying from mosquito-borne illnesses. Wildlife stabilizes. Entire ecosystems seem calmer. So far, it feels like a win. But then comes the question everyone's afraid to ask. What about the food chain? Mosquitoes are eaten by birds, frogs, fish, bats. Remove them, and everything should collapse, right? But this is where it gets weird. Most of those predators don't rely heavily on mosquitoes. They adapt. They switch diets. Nature adjusts. So now we're left with a shocking realization. Removing one of the deadliest creatures on Earth barely disrupts the ecosystem at all. Which sounds too good to be true. Because it is. And that's when the real consequences start to surface. Here's the twist no one talks about. Not all mosquitoes are dangerous. In fact, out of thousands of species, only a handful actually bite humans and spread disease. So when we talk about wiping them out, we're not targeting the killers. We're erasing everything. And that raises a serious question. Do we have the right to eliminate an entire species? But here's where it gets even more complicated. There's a theory, one that sounds almost unbelievable. Mosquitoes might actually be protecting one of the most important ecosystems on Earth, the Amazon rainforest. Because they're so aggressive, so relentless, They make certain areas nearly impossible for humans to exploit. Logging operations. Deforestation. Sometimes the mosquitoes win, and that means the forest survives. But here's the part that changes everything. What if mosquitoes aren't just a threat? What if they're a barrier? A natural defense system? And now the question flips completely. If we remove them, do we accidentally remove one of the last protections standing between humans and total environmental destruction? But wait, there's one more layer. Something even darker. What if mosquitoes aren't controlling forests, but controlling us? Human population is growing faster than ever. Billions and rising. More people means more pressure, more consumption, more strain on the planet. And this is where it gets uncomfortable. Mosquitoes have been quietly influencing human population for thousands of years. Not by choice, not by design, but through disease. Malaria alone has shaped civilizations, changed wars, altered migration patterns. And here's the chilling thought. What if mosquitoes have been acting as an invisible balancing force, keeping populations in check without anyone realizing it? Sounds disturbing, but think about it. Remove them, and suddenly, millions more survive every year. Population surges, resources shrink faster, and the planet feels it. So now the question isn't just, should we get rid of mosquitoes? It becomes, what happens after we do? Because solving one problem might create another, far bigger one. And that's the paradox. Mosquitoes are both villain and potential stabilizer. Deadly, yet strangely necessary. So what's the right move? Eliminate them and save millions? Or keep them and preserve balance? And here's the question that lingers long after everything else fades. If we had the power to erase them forever,